All right, we are live. We are back live. Third episode, season one. I am Anubix. I'm gonna pass it to Michael. Go ahead and take it from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael. I run the YouTube channel at Michael Gaucher, and I'm glad to be here with my great friends who are cybersecurity experts and aficionados, and hopefully we can dive into some very interesting topics today.
So, guys, my name's Jesse Bentley. You can find my stuff at jessebentley.com, also known as CERT. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff to talk about.
Awesome. Yeah, so much interesting things to talk about. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. I think the hardest part right here is like picking which one to start with first. So I don't know. What do you want to do? Rock, paper, scissors, Rochambeau.
Uh, you have to start with the dumbest security breach we've seen in a long time. It's so bad.
I feel like that's your favorite. So go ahead, kick it off. Kick it off.
All right, so last weekend we got to see AI fighting AI. Instagram got breached to their chatbot system, and the attack pipeline is one of the dumbest and most simple things that I've ever seen, I think, in, God, years. So the way the hack actually works, you pick your target, you go to their Instagram page and pull a picture of them, use AI to 3D generate a short video of them turning their head so that it can do facial recognition. You VPN into an area around them. Doesn't even have to be where they're at specifically. It's literally a region of the United States, for instance. So you go into their chatbot, you say, oh no, I forgot my password. One of two things is going to happen. They're either going to send you a two-factor authentication or a multi-factor authentication prompt, in which case the hacker's stuck. That's actually what defended against this attack. You just had to have the simplest form of 2FA setup. So if you didn't have that set up, it does facial verification. So then you upload the video and the chatbot accepts it and lets you change the recovery email on the spot. Then forget password. It sends you the recovery to the new email that you just provided, and now you have the account. If they would have had human in the loop, forced 2FA, there's so many things that could have prevented this. Like, why would you give AI access to account information, for instance? Why would you give something just full control of changing people's accounts? This is infuriating.
I mean, first and foremost, just like the elephant in the room, like how does this like even happen in 2026?
Right?
Like, I think that before even going into any type of details or anything like that, just that alone, I think is still mind-boggling. But yeah, I don't know, Michael. What do you think about it?
Well, a lot of it stems from the business culture in the US. And the business culture, in many cases, is driven on dreams, it's driven on speculation, and it's driven on, I guess, a level of adrenaline to want to get as much profit as you can and get to first base before anyone else. And you do that by putting away the guardrails. And business leaders traditionally, at least those that want to push the business further and fastest, they want to go the distance without guardrails. And that's what we see here. Is part of it is the Silicon Valley culture of move fast, break things, and go as quickly as you can to be the first, to have the first mover advantage, as we've heard. And we're seeing the fallout from a couple of decades of that mentality just accumulate. It's like technical debt, but you might call this business debt in a way, ideologically. And that is where that has led us so far.
Now, would you say like there is any correlation into how the individual who was going at it with Microsoft, like, does this play into that at all? Like, do you see any correlation?
Oh, absolutely. And Microsoft being the large business that they are, Jesse and I was talking about this offline about Microsoft's pivot on the bug bounty program, right? And how that definitely undermines the course of cybersecurity and cybersecurity research. And it's about expediency. And so it's about those things that's going to allow you to save face, as opposed to those things that are going to really emphasize engineering, emphasize quality, and look out for the best interests of the end users and the people that ultimately depend on Microsoft. So again, you could see this play out with AI versus AI, and as a neat scenario that has really just gone off the rails. And I think a theme that you'll probably hear from me during the discussion is about this concept of guardrails, and how we really need to get back to that if we are to have any chance of reining this in and avoiding the situation going forward. And I guess if you were to play devil's advocate on that, it's like the we've already opened Pandora's box, and we may have gone too far to roll this back to any sane point.
I think that's one of the worrying parts, in my opinion, is I think that this is just one of many times that we're going to see this, because everybody's throwing AI at payment systems, for example, and it's not something that's being closely monitored behind the scenes. So I think that it's been opened, like you said, and it's only going to get worse.
I mean,
And
especially like if you're looking at where Anthropic was kind of like trying to throw in the anchor or throw in the towel, so to speak, saying that, hey, AI has, it might be outpacing its growth from the human element, right? Yeah, it's all great. I mean, once you've already made buku money off of the product you say is now sprawling out of control, um, what's your take on that?
well, so it's one of those things where there's a silver lining, at least from my point of view. It's like the greater the level of catastrophe, the greater the level of opportunity. And so when you start to see certain companies or certain organizations go too far in the wrong direction, you see a correction. We're starting to see elements of this, right? I learned today that Microsoft, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and representatives from Microsoft, they made the statement that AI actually may be more expensive than the humans it was designed to replace. And I was, all of us would be surprised to hear that, because 12 months, 24 months ago, it was a completely different story. But they're very serious in what they're saying here. They are saying that the compute costs, the token costs, you got companies spending $500 million in a month, just a single company, $500 million in a month on tokens. Where do you get that money back? You can't. You got to pay that bill. And so Microsoft is now making a recommendation regarding local AI, regarding local compute. They're looking at the costs of data centers. Now, to be fair to Microsoft, about 12-ish months ago, maybe a little bit further back, Satya Nadella did say that they may have to roll back or pull back from some data center investments, contracts that they had issued to have new data centers built. They took a second look at that from a financial standpoint and said they may have to pull back from that. And that was more about cost control. But as they got into this, they're looking at, the overall costs, and it's skyrocketing more than they thought. I think some people thought that the cost of compute would actually come down a little bit, kind of like a very rough form of Moore's law, how the cost of computation would roughly double around every 18 months, as well as seeing the costs decline. But they're seeing the opposite happen. And so Microsoft is coming out with their Surface RTX Spark. I don't know if you heard about that. It's a new hardware that they have announced. And it's not really new. It's really NVIDIA's DGI Spark from last year, just with the Microsoft package, because NVIDIA's hardware, it runs Linux, and this is just an offering that runs Windows on ARM using the NVIDIA chip, and it's a box. So if you want to do local LLM, you can do that, and Microsoft's officially supporting that. But I think that's the corner that we're starting to see, is that, okay, cloud is getting expensive, even for the cloud providers. Google is wanting $80 billion. They're selling off a piece of their company just to build more data centers. And so what I was saying earlier about things getting more catastrophic, that there's an opportunity. There is an opportunity for traditionalists. There is an opportunity for people that have had a contrarian view all along. And one of those views that I would espouse, among others, is to take a look at what I call safety critical software development. So that's really, the path that I am recommending software developers, in particular, adjacent to cybersecurity and other fields, is take a look at how software is built for automotive, aerospace, and locomotives, as well as healthcare, like pacemakers. Those are areas where, when you build software, it cannot fail. It has to stay up for almost an indefinite period of time, and it has to have graceful failure states where there's still a minimum state of viable operation. And that type of thinking is completely in contrast to what we see with people wanting to use a non-deterministic AI model as the means for executing code. So back to what we were talking about with these AI issues, with basically the return of the 1990s SQL prompt injection, just now in 2026 with AI prompt injection. We're basically just seeing a return of that, where we just haven't utilized all the lessons we've learned over the last 40 years in software development, and we just put all of that aside for the pipe dream that AI will do anything for us.
So on the localized AI, you were talking about the Microsoft Spark. So a gentleman that used to work for AMD, I think he worked on the Ryzen project, he actually made an open source GPU, which, as far as I know, it's the first open source GPU on market. I believe that it's supposed to compete with like the 4090 or 5090, but it's only $1,000. And everything for it's open source. If you want to look into that, it's the TENS torrent black hole. It's super neat. But sorry, that's random. Or the Tesla cards. You can actually get used Tesla cards off eBay that are 16 gig VRAM, and you buy a backplane for it for like $40. And those are like 200-ish off eBay, being sold in bulk. Great for local LLMs. But on the self-learning loop, I think we don't have to worry about it outpacing us too much, for the simple fact that Anthropic's paying, what is it, Starlink, I believe it's $1 billion a month, and they're still under contract with Google for $3.4 billion a month. You look at numbers like that, yeah, they can't afford the infrastructure to outpace too much.
So yeah, the costs of all of this, it's outstripping everyone, and you have to ask yourself, beyond what we have established here with the dream level, or the delusion of some members of the business class, right? And I think we can safely use that. I mean, I would refer everyone to Mark Cuban. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Mark Cuban, but he's famous for being on Shark Tank, Once upon a time, he was a tech guy who helped create some of the pioneering software technology for computer graphics. But he's long since become a major investor. And he was at a meeting or a conference about a month or so ago, roughly a month ago, and they asked him, "Hey, what's going to happen with this $1 trillion investment with OpenAI?" And he, being the type of person he said, "You're never going to get that money back." So it's just done. And it's the same thing with Anthropic and with the rest of them. And I like their products. So from a end user standpoint, I actually like what they do, right? Um, and I use Google AI Studio this week for the first time. I was introduced to that, and I had a million token session, and I was able to create some amazing software using that for the very first time in a short amount of time. Saved me months of work. I created some amazing agents, you might say, that can do some great stuff in terms of data conversion and transformation. But so they got some great stuff. But in terms of scale, their business has hit a ceiling, and they have a real issue right now in terms of being able to return that money to their investors. And there's a reckoning that's coming along with that, that we're going to see play out in the public. And at the same time, we're going to see companies like Microsoft. They're going to pivot. They're showing signs of that. They're saying, hey, you all remember on-premise Microsoft Exchange servers and on-premise SQL servers and all that sort of thing? Microsoft is kind of hinting, oh well, we're gonna switch back to that for a little while, right? And I think this is going to get real messy before it gets cleaned up.
I mean, I feel like this is a constant thing that we keep harping about, but like realistically, like where do we? I mean, besides like where do we go from here, right? Realistically, like in the next 6, 9, 12 months, I'm just excited to see like where it really goes. Like, I mean, every day we're seeing so many different new improvements. Yeah, there's a lot of negative or not really good feedback, but at the same time, that comes with you know any new technology or anytime you're trying to go above and beyond what's known currently as possible, right, or feasible, for that matter. But I mean, do any of you guys think like realistically individuals are going to start moving more towards utilizing local LLMs, um, by by the hardware of like Spark and stuff like that?
I 100% think so. You can look at social media feeds as an example. Everybody's jumping on the train of, I want to make the video first on how to set up this AI pipeline. It's blowing up on like YouTube, and I want to say there's a world in which these frontier models are actually feasible, but I think the only chance in hell we have at even going in that direction is if we stop pushing for throwing more power at it and look at like the DeepSeek or the Chinese approach, where they're using outdated hardware, but they're making these models that are super efficient. I think that's the route we need to start looking at if we want this to be sustainable.
Yes. So getting back to the software.
Yes, and I totally agree with that. And I think, yes, local AI is going to be the opportunity going forward. You're still going to have cloud AI, right? And it was my prediction in 2022 in a video that I did. I said that Google's going to win the cloud AI race, and I still hold to that in many respects, because they already had the dormant compute capacity in terms of data center build out. But in terms of like innovations locally, that's where you get everyone who is tinkering and trying to figure out, because if you compile llama CPP, yeah, you can find instructions on the internet for that, but you know, that's where you bring in your graybeard C++ developers. That's where you bring in your people that want to really work with compute at the machine level and optimize. And if you've played around with these a little bit, you see that you got these JSON data packets floating all over the place, and you're going to need structure around that. You got tools like LLM Studio that helps do that for some people. But to really get that optimization, you got to get at that data layer with the local models in order to be able to do a variety of things. And so there is a push simultaneously from some of the cloud providers like Google in coordination with Apple to have local LLMs, not just on a desktop form factor, but a mobile form factor. And I'm very optimistic about that because I think it would be cool to be able to integrate LLMs into many conventional software applications, right? So imagine you build a GUI screen. So you got this screen where you're doing some functions visually. And one of the things you can do is you can integrate real-time documentation and guidance into the process as it's running. And I think there's going to be some great outcomes for that. So what it is, it's you're fusing together deterministic software development as been practiced since the origin of software development with this statistical non-deterministic process that has its own benefits in terms of text translation and visualization. So all the things that you can do currently with some of your cloud AIs, such as generate images, generate charts, do visualizations, pull together all kinds of data tables. You will be able to do that with local applications at the enterprise. And it's going to be absolutely awesome once you get control over that, where you have the right software development methodology. So it's not going to change software development dramatically in terms of how it's practiced, but what it will do is it will substantially, or at least give us incentive to raise the level of quality, raise the bar in software development to be able to do some very amazing things. I have dozens of ideas how that's going to happen, and I know I'm not alone with that. So we're going to see a era of real innovation, real invention, real growth that's going to come out of the local LLM space. Because you have to think about it. If you're using a cloud LLM and you're using agentic APIs, right, that you're paying for, there's a built-in latency and bottleneck there. I'm trying to iterate on something. I'm trying to build something. And now I got to worry about my bill, right? I'm not talking about somebody that's working at a big company where, they can afford a $500,000 bill on some tokens. I'm talking about someone that doesn't need that latency or that concern, right? Where they may be more capped if they continue to use cloud API like with Claude or with Gemini CLI and these other tools. But when they have the local LLM, they're able to move much more smoothly, much more fluidly, and have a much better feedback cycle as you do in conventional software development. And then finally, what you have is it's like Microsoft says, you have control over your tokens, and you have unlimited spend when it comes to local LLMs. So I think that's where a lot of the breakthroughs are going to happen in the next little while.
I would like to say, though, if you are going to do a local LLM, get it from somewhere reputable. You don't want to just grab random ones off GitHub, because that's a whole new security footprint that's happening. And I've already read reports on a few security-specific LLMs that are actually just exfiltrating your data. So be very careful there.
Oh, and then along with that, that's where we also have the attack vector from the cloud LLM situation itself, right? So that's why I don't use cloud. That's why I don't use Claude Code. I don't use Claude Code. I don't use Gemini CLI. I stay with an interactive session in the cloud, because there is a risk vector where as soon as you have Claude Code laying right on your computer, it can see everything. It's supposed to be sandbox, but we know sandboxes can be breached. And it can see all of your stuff. You got private files, you got all this stuff. So I don't know how enterprises live with themselves who do that, but that's a significant risk factor. So that's just on the American side. So then if you're using DeepSeek API, for example, or Quinn APIs, then from a national security standpoint, then your exposure potentially expands even further. So I think, again, that also puts even more emphasis on local LLMs, or makes the case for that. In addition to what Jesse was saying, make sure you have a model that is reasonably vetted, although I would say that there's nothing that's 100% guaranteed, but you want to at least do as much due diligence as you can, and work with as many reputable sources as you can in order to get through that. And I say to that end, Gemma 4 is going to be a good baseline for those that just want to, kind of get their risk profile under control overall, because out of all the players, Google, they do want to analyze and surveil data, but you can almost make the case that they have the least incentive out of all the players to try to do something you might consider malicious on a scale of 1 to 10. Maybe their malicious level is still at a 3 or 4, harkening back to their early "Don't be evil" motto, which they have since sunset.
So in regards to, I just want to jump back to the Spark real quick, right? So realistically, say we get one of these, what are we really looking at in regards to the capabilities of being able to use one of these things? Like, are we looking at like 30 billion parameter, the smaller MOE type local models? Like, what do these pieces of hardware actually and realistically produce?
I haven't even looked it up. I haven't seen anything on this.
I'm realistically trying to get like an idea, like, because the way I look at it, like you take like the whole Apple thing, right? The Steve Jobs thing, right? Like, there's what, 3, 4, 5 individuals in a garage or what have you. I keep in my brain, I'm just saying, like, 9 months to a year down the line, you got 4 or 5 dudes each have one of these boxes, and leveraging the compute from the 5 of these boxes, leveraging that to like start some new company or something. Like, I don't know, like that keeps playing in the back of my mind as something that we'll be seeing with just here shortly.
Do we know how much VRAM it's got, or what card it's on, or anything yet? Or if it's unified memory?
I had the, and you were talking about the NVIDIA one, right? DG Export. Was that the one you guys were talking about earlier?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm trying to look that one up now. All right, so it's the 128 gigabyte LP DDR system on a SOC ARM based.
Because the make or break will probably be if it's unified memory or not. Because that's one of the things that makes Apple so great for LLMs, is the fact that it's unified memory.
Okay, so just a surface level reading of this. So when you look at the DGX Spark, right, and Microsoft is making the same claims as for the DGI Spark because it's essentially the same thing, right? So if you look up DGX Spark, right, you're basically comparing apples to apples, no pun intended, right? So, but yeah, 200 billion parameters, right? And if you get a really expensive set of hardware, you're looking at 405 billion parameters if you link two DGI Spark units together. But yeah, you're looking at NVIDIA's Grace Blackwell chip in general, right? And so the big news is about the raw performance, roughly 1 petaflop, right? Or roughly 1,000 TOPS, trillion operations per second, right? And if you think about where the Microsoft Surface back in 2020, late 2023, middle 2024, where we're talking about the Copilot Plus PCs. I know everybody remembers that, right? Copilot Plus PCs was billed as, the first AI computer offered from Microsoft, right? So that was introduced at 45 TOPS, right? So that's consumer level hardware on Qualcomm chips, right? Because I was heavily involved with all of that when it was released, right? So the real story about Surface when it was being put out there was about its TOPS. Well, what people missed was that Apple MacBooks at the time, because the way Apple did their architecture at a hardware level, it also roughly offered about 45 TOPS. Well, you compare that to this, you're talking about 1,000 TOPS. What can you do with 1,000 trillion operations per second? You do quite a bit. And it's using FP4, right? Floating point 4, right? So there's been an issue with the calculation of, I'm going to try not to get too technical here. I'm going to keep it surface level. But the thing is when you're calculating vectors in a vector database for AI, that's how the data is actually stored, then a lot of that data is almost roughly equivalent to a way that people can understand. It's like if you took geometry class, right? And you're trying to plot on an XY coordinate system, right? Okay, so you got an X, you have your X, you got your point, your XY point, and you got another XY point. What's the distance between this point and that point? Okay, that's the basic thing. Now, imagine that you have millions of these points, and among all of those millions of points, you're trying to find just the area of points that are relevant. See, your actual text data is not stored as text. It's stored as these points. They're called vector embeddings in the vector databases, okay? And the whole objective with the pattern matching in the AI is find the distance, the similarity. It's called the similarity distance between the points. But it takes a lot of compute and calculation to do that. So these points are not integer-based points. It's not like I'm at point 1, 2, and the other point is like 2, 4. It's more like it's okay. I got 1.00006, 1.00007 or something like that, because you got so much density in the data. So then that puts you into floating point mathematics. How quickly can you execute the floating point mathematics? Traditionally in computers, especially with your scalar processors, like your AMD processors and your Intel processors, those are classified as scalar processors, right? Whereas your graphics cards, those are considered vector-based processors, hence why GPUs have been used for AI predominantly. So the thing about that is even if you can calculate multiple data points at the same time, like what you can with GPUs through matrix algebras and matrix mathematics, you're still going to pay a bottleneck cost in your cache and your overall compute bandwidth right there in the VRAM and the overall computational units that's built in there. So how do you speed that up? You don't speed that up with software. You don't speed that up with a software library that says, okay, I can calculate the floating point, the floating point quantity virtually using a floating point software library. you encode it in hardware. You want to speed something up, encode it in hardware. So then that's where they started saying, okay, when they started out with AI, they was doing a lot of this with floating point 16. Okay. But the problem with floating point 16 is that there's too much data, and you start to lose cache locality. So the ability to shorten that, right? You're able to speed that up and you're able to increase the density. So anyway, that was a long way to say that these chips, they have floating point 4 at such a level where you're going to be able to calculate the vector representations of data much faster than if you're running this on a typical CPU, because your typical CPUs, they give you too much variability, right? And it's so tempting for the hardware architecture to adjust you up to a larger word size. That's why they call 32-bit and 64-bit processors, right? And so that's one of the benefits that you have here. And you also have a higher memory bandwidth, 273 gigabytes per second, right? I mean, that's pretty huge with LPDDR5. And so you're able to do a lot of that. But as much as we are, touting all of that, here's the reality. Those are $5,000 machines. Some people will be able to buy that. The vast majority of developers, and most especially those ones that are out there that are tinkerers and that's just playing with this stuff, in this economy, they're not buying a $3,000, $5,000 machine. So I applaud Microsoft for putting that stuff out there. It's great, right? You're going to have a lot of developers. They're going to use older RTX 3090s or whatever if they can get their hands on it. And then those that have their machines frozen in time prior to the RAM prices going up and all of that, they're going to try to do this stuff on regular CPUs, and that's what I'm doing, right? I'm getting local LLMs to run on just regular CPUs, right? Because I have a graphics card, but it's still not powerful enough, right? And so it's like, that's where your innovation is going to come, because, one of the problems with, and I'll close here, one of the problems with software development over the last 20 years, 30 years, is that we were fed a false promise. We were fed a false thing that if you just write your code any way you want, the compute is going to just grow. Remember the vertical scalability argument that said, oh, don't optimize your code. The processors are just going to get bigger. You can put it in the cloud, and that ain't work. Okay, so now we're reverting back in many cases, say, okay, even if you're an enterprise, I cannot afford that RAM. I cannot afford that hardware. I need to go back old school. We need to hey, 64 kilobytes is all you need, like Bill Gates says.
So I got a question for you. So it's $5,000 for that. I was mentioning the Tesla cards earlier, which are, they're enterprise GPUs that are being sold secondhand on eBay for like $200, but they're specifically designed for AI. So you can get an Ethereum rack for $500 used for mining Ethereum, and then throw 8 of those in it. And you're looking at 128 gigs dedicated, designed for artificial intelligence specifically. I feel like that's a better entry level for the everyday man.
And not only is it a better entry level, it's also and I hate to abuse this word, but it's an innovation opportunity for tinkerers. I like to put the emphasis on tinkerers, because traditionally there's no incentive for established big companies to do the type of things that you have to do when push comes to shove and your resources are limited at the level of an individual solo researcher, cybersecurity professional, software developer, you name it, right? So somebody's going to get those Tesla chips like you talked about. And just like in the late 1990s, where people were experimenting with Beowulf clusters with Linux, when that was just a nascent thing, right? And that helped give rise to distributed architectures the way that we've seen it at cloud scale. Somebody's going to figure out how to do what some of the cloud compute AI is allowing you to do, but do it for a fraction of the cost, right? And for all we know, maybe a Chinese lab will figure that out and sell it on Alibaba, and you just get your kit. It's going to come in many different ways from many different directions, and it's going to be absolutely great. And here's the thing. If the large companies don't watch it, you're going to have some new Google. We're going to have the 2028 version of the Google in their garage that's going to, displace the established players.
Zoom.
And a whole lot of zip ties. Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, I really, again, I say this the second time. I'm really excited about what the next year projects, right? Or within this next year, next 360 some days. But again, yeah, like you're always gonna have those individuals who like their whole purpose is to do more with less, right? I think in doing so, not only do you allow yourself to think outside the box to come up with different solutions, right? Because you already have to think about, hey, I don't have X, Y, but I still need to get to Z. What can I use from V or R to get to Z, right? So it starts making the traditional understanding of whatever you're working on go even deeper to that next level. So within that vertical, like how do you guys see that sparking the next revolution? Because I think that will be where it goes to. So like what do you think will be the main fire starter, so to speak?
Man, I'm hoping to be one of those fire starters with the stuff that I'm researching. And this is something that I'm going to start disclosing in a little while. I'm just working on it right now and polishing it. But the thing is, in my own software development research and evolution, I have really embraced personally, because it's always a question of what is your style? What is your approach? When you're working on a team, you do the team standards and you read all the same books as all the other software developers and you talk the same language. And, today's vernacular, it's terms like solid and dry, don't repeat yourself, and, CI, CD, and all this kind of stuff. Great. All right. But when you're doing your own solo stuff, you have an opportunity to say, let's pioneer. Let's do something completely different than what the norm does. And so for me, that has been embracing what I call safety critical software development. And safety critical software development actually has a very strong tie to cybersecurity. They're almost like not cousins. They're like, brother and brother or brother and sister, right? Because it's like, how do you lock down a system from an architectural, you heard the whole saying, security is not something you want to try to bolt on after the fact. It's something you want to bake in. But here's the issue. How do you define an architecture that is not something that you have to really think about, but it's an architecture that's in your DNA as a coder? So the code you write, not the frameworks that you use, not the libraries that you could get out there that may have some security aspects to them. When you write code, you do a for loop, you do an if statement. What is your actual path of definition where when you define that, it automatically has positive cybersecurity, adversarial defense posture built into it by virtue of how it's been written in the first place, right? That's number one. Number two, okay, we have an issue with compute. We have an issue with resource utilization. Defining the code in such a way where from first principles, it's efficient out the gate, where you're not straining to optimize it. When you write the code, it's optimized by virtue of how you write it, okay? And I have proof for this, right? I have about 9 little utilities that I developed with the assistance of Google AI, right? And I can tell you that if you use conventional software development principles, those 9 utilities that I developed, you will spend hours, if not a week or more, debugging and all of that. And that's what a lot of developers are complaining about today. They're complaining about it AI is generating so much more code that they spend more of their time reviewing it, that many of them, they're becoming disinterested in software development. So then I'm using a different approach. I'm using safety critical software development. And I'm doing it in such a way where I can almost instantly train the AI in one shot. This is how you write software. I can use any programming language, C++, C Sharp, Java, Python, you name it. But by having the right principles together in the right concoction, then when it develops software for me based off of my prompting, that software has a less than 5% defect rate. So then I iterate and I give it back telemetry on what went wrong. It's able to use a more mathematical process, not a general software development and engineering logical process where you might try this, you might try that. What did the other developers in the training data set say? And it may or may not be wrong. No, it's much more stringent and strict, and it's able to get to the proper answer sooner and much earlier in the process, so that you're able to define processes in the same way you would develop a Mars rover that's going to go several million miles away, and you can't send a tech support person over to actually tweak anything, right? It has to work. It has to work out there. And if you bring that here locally, you're able to develop software that is going to be able to work according to those constraints. And then this morning, I got up at 6 a.m. and I went to Starbucks, and I said, you know what? I got this thing that I need to do right now. I got all of these blog articles. I got thousands of them, and I want to move all of them into Google Notebook LM. I have a problem. These articles are on WordPress, and when you export to WordPress, it's in XML format. And I'm not going to sit here and write a utility that's going to take me a week to write it, that's going to split all of that into markdown files that I can have Notebook LM ingest, because Notebook LM is not going to like that XML format. I was able to, through Google AI Studio, make a clone of my my chat, because I love this new stuff that Google has done where you can branch off chats now. It's amazing, where you can make a whole clone of a large token chat where I'd already spent 1 million tokens. And I said to the AI, well, I'm going to divert you temporarily, right? And we're going to do this thing, blah, 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 blah. I need you to do something practical for me. And I need you to take this WordPress WXR format. Now, this is the underlying story of using AI. I know what I was doing already. I've already studied the WordPress XML formats. I've had long, in-depth discussions with LLMs about it. I've already done prototypes on it. But long story short, it was able to use the mathematical rigor that was applied to this other process that I told you about, and it was able to quickly make a one-shot, flawless, perfect output that took that entire XML dump and turned it into the proper markdown layout that I was able to ingest right into Notebook LM, and then do my prompts in Notebook LM and have it just do whatever it needs to do. So if you approach this the right way, yeah, I mean, you can do some things with that. And then if you take that, you combine that with local LM, you're going to be able to do some software development processes that our forebears could only dream of.
Yeah, I actually just learned about some of that today with the pre-processing caching, to utilize that those processes, because basically after you're done, like they just trash it, right? Where if you cache it, then you have that the prior pre-processing, so you can utilize that computational work to, instead of having it reinvent the wheel, it uses that, and to your point, the one shot kill, so to speak. That's awesome, dude. Like I literally just learned that today. And the first thing I did was like, okay, because obviously it's within the Claude or Anthropic format with Claude. So the first thing I did was like, hey, this process, right, in Claude, how do I do it in Gemini, right? Like, because I mean, I like Claude because the Claude Code is really good, right? It's really efficient, works well. But if I can get Google to get to that level, right? If I can utilize, whether through the studios or Notebook LM or what have you, if I can get it tweaked to the point where I can get it to code, at least on par. It doesn't have to be better or whatever, just like on par, right? Then I would like to stick with Google.
The generic code should be roughly the same. I think it's the architectural design difference that you'll notice the major difference. Like Claude's architecting is by far better than Gemini's, in my opinion.
That's yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. The overall just how it creates the code, and its points for why it did it the way it did it. I've seen it be a lot better on the Claude side than the Gemini side, so to speak.
Prompt Claude for its reasoning behind the architecture that way, then give that to Gemini and see if it does the architecture. So have Claude like either pseudocode or give you the prompt information to generate it. You're muted.
Yep. So can you see that?
Yeah.
All right. So this is Google AI Studio, and I think this has been out since April. But basically, what you can do is you can basically set up what I would call dual layer or triple layer prompts. So, for example, you can set up a very extensive prompt that sets the baseline for everything. And then when you get, to the very beginning of the session, and you'll see I have a very long session. This is actually a 12-hour session, right? Essentially. But basically, you can set up the foundation for what you're going to do. And then, long story short, you just go through the different phases of design, right? Say I didn't output a lot of code as I went along. But what I did is I just kept iterating on the design because I have 20 plus years of experience with this. So I'm not in a rush to actually generate any code. I know what the code should look like and as it's outputting it. So that's what this long conversation is. And then once we got to a certain point where it was go time, right? Down here somewhere, it's like down in the weeds, right? Then it's like, okay, let's start integrating these things together. But what this does, let's see if it shows, at the top, you'll see what it does is it actually gives you the tokens you've used, right? So I started out with 0, and I somehow worked my way up to 1 million tokens. Whereas if you're in Gemini, right, or Claude, you're going to exceed your session limit, well before I even got halfway through here, even a third away. It's just gone. So then if I'm typing a prompt, I'm just going to put some words in here. You'll see that it's actually estimating how many tokens that's going to be, right? It just changes that. So see up at the top, go to 705, go down a little bit more. See it updates 703. So if you're headed down what do you call that? A buffer overflow situation. When you go and you attach files, it calculates the token count on the files. So okay, it's not going to work if I try to upload this, right? Or I'm going to just totally invalidate my whole session and I'd have to start all the way over, right? And I had a few moments like that where I said, I got to rethink this, right? Because I had debug output, I had diagnostics, and some of that swelled to like a couple of 100 megabytes, and it's like you have to use your Linux commands, head -n 2000, and just pipe that out so that you're only getting enough of an excerpt for it to be able to understand. But what's great about this is that, as you can see here, I got this history, and you can go into any one of these, right? And what you can do is you're working this, and you can sit here and you can say, make a copy. That's my favorite feature of all time with this. I've been wanting this for the last 3 years that I've been using AI. That's all I really wanted, besides some other things. But so you make a copy, and of course, you got to make sure that once you make a copy, you click save, because if you don't, it's just stored in your local storage in your browser, and it auto deletes after 48 hours, right? So you got to make sure that you have truly saved this out. But you do different sessions. You have your prompts here. You have your starter prompt there, and so you basically got 2 prompts running at the same time in order to do this sort of thing. So I think that's the future in many respects in terms of how we're able to use these tools and make significant ground in what we're able to produce.
So in Claude, to get something similar, you actually have to create a project folder. And you could go in and set your persona and everything in the description or system prompt. That way, every chat you open in that project will use that system information. That was a good persona, by the way. I like that.
Yeah, so I just realized in Claude, because for whatever reason I was like, man, like, is there a way to tell how much it would cost me, like anytime I upload an image or something like that? And it's actually the pixel size of both height and weight, or excuse me, height and width, divided by 750.
Well, Claude and Gemini, they're going to tell you after the fact. So it's like, it's too late. But there are Python scripts out there that exist, principally Python, but they've been ported to other languages that can do token calculations. They can be very misleading, because the token calculations has to be aligned to the model that's actually being used, because different models calculate tokens in different ways.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to get to. I was like, and then I saw, as I was going more through it, that it was stating like, well, it always falls back on the model that you're currently utilizing. So I was like,
So
cool.
Does /cost in Claude give you what you want, where it's showing you the current cost of your prompts? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I wanted to see if it was just like across the board. Like, is there a way? And I found out real fast that the way is simple. Understand which model it is, and understand how much it is for that model.
For Claude Code specifically, you can use /code, and it'll show you the pricing based on the model you're on for the task that you're requesting.
Okay. Other than that, we're about 3 minutes out, so I'll do the quick shout outs real quick. I remember this time. First and foremost, Forsec was basically created. I'll keep it short, man. It was created for the next gen individuals trying to get into cybersecurity who come from that tinker mindset, who like to get their hands dirty, grassroots type stuff, right? And then Hack Myrtle, mid-November, it'll be out here in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach area. And it'll basically be for individuals, whether you're in college, early in your career, or what have you. Basically, it'll be one point of where everybody can come out, have a good time, and kind of see what the tempo is in cybersecurity at that point in time. Other than that, you guys have anything that you want to lead off with?
Well, I would say just, like always, like we've said in previous sessions as we conclude, just stay optimistic, stay positive. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, and I've personally started to tune a lot of that out, and just watch what you're watching, because yes, there's some valid points in terms of the skeptics regarding AI and cybersecurity. But I think if we stick to, what we're personally doing and doing to advance, and just continue to focus on growing our skills, to continue building. So there's this newsletter that I subscribe to from the Wade Report. There's this guy on YouTube. His name is Antoine Wade. And he makes a very good point. And his point is you have builders, you have coordinators, and you got sellers, right? Those are your three classifications, right? Those of us that's talking here, we're builders. We like to build things. You got people who sell. They're very close to the money. But then you got the coordinators. They're the people that, for lack of a better term, they push paper and that sort of thing. And we are in a time where AI is being used to try to push more of the coordinators out. So really focus on building, because building is where the value is, and it always has been. And if you do that, no matter what your personal situation is, personal challenges you face, because I know people have seen these layoffs and that sort of thing. You may have to do something different temporarily in the meantime, but continue to build on your skills, because as the headlines have shown, they're having second thoughts. They are really having second thoughts. And you want to be the person whose number is called when it's your time, and it's going to be your time if you're prepared. So don't give into the doom and gloom, which would distract you from investing in yourself. If you have a passion for this industry, you're somebody that says, I like to do exploits, and I like to do red team and blue team stuff because I just think that is so interesting. Then that's what you need to be doing. If you're a person that likes to build stuff and code and create and craft, you need to be doing that. And whether it turns out to something that has commercial viability, that's not the point. The point is you're going to have your portfolio. Your portfolio is going to reflect if you truly are interested in this, and that you can complete things, and that you have some kind of mind towards value. And eventually people are going to pick you for that.
It's well said. Stay curious. And if you do enjoy something, by all means do that, because the dopamine hit when you build something that works can't replace it.
Nice, nice. All right. To continue on with our X or Y for this week, let's do Intel or AMD.
AMD.
Oh, I'm AMD all the way.
All right, 3 across the board. AMD. I'm gonna go with AMD. All right, cool. Other than that, man, again, I'm a Nubix. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll leave that with you guys. Go ahead.
Peace.
All right, see you guys.